welcome to the Brick Doc Intensive Distribution Panel. My name is Sky McLeod. I am the Associate Director for Education here at Brick, and I'm really excited to have these four wonderful panelists and wonderful moderator here giving a panel on distribution today. So just for those of you who don't know, the Brick Doc Intensive is our first foray into a long form or a longer 3-month long class, and we wanted to include all the aspects of production, pre-production, post-production, and distribution into the class. So this is the first time we've done this. It's really exciting. And this show will be airing on our channels and online. So take a look for that when we're done editing. So I'm going to now just explain a little bit about how the format's going to work. Liam's going to introduce the panelists, and then we'll give each panelist a little bit of time just to talk broadly about their area of expertise, and then we'll go into a Q&A where you all can answer questions. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Liam. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Okay. Hi, everybody. So thanks for coming out. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Liam Billingham. I'm a filmmaker, documentary and fiction, and I also am the instructor of the Doc Intensive that we've been doing for the past 3.5 months. Wow. And next week is our last week. We're doing a screening on Thursday at the Bishop, in case you guys are free, of all the films. And I think it's worth just saying quickly that for most of our students, it's their first doc or second doc, sort of newer to the process, and they're still figuring out where, yeah, it's awesome, right? Woo! They're sort of figuring out where their pieces are going in the long term. So I think when we were discussing this, the idea was to give them sort of a broad perspective on the different models and ways of distributing the films, because speaking for myself, I know that that's like the great conundrum with so much content. So I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say. So I'm not going to spend too much time introducing our panelists, but we have Kristen Fitzpatrick from Women Make Movies. We have Jose Rodriguez from Tribeca. Documentary, I should be clear. We have Bob Seigel, who's an entertainment lawyer. So can really answer. Lawyers are going to be incredibly valuable to you guys going forward. And we have Randi Cecchine.
Randi Cecchine.
Randi Cecchine. Wow, that's bad. Cecchine. I'm going to spend the whole panel working on that from Films Media Group. And thank you all so much for being here. This is exciting. So I guess let's just get right into it. Kristen, do you want to talk a little bit about Women Make Movies? I know you have, and what, your focus, and we also have some trailers, I think. So however you want to proceed, let's go for it.
First, I'm going to say that when you do take it off? Okay. Thank you. It's always funny when you do panels because you usually try to get into the room first to not get the first seat, because then you can hear what everyone else is going to say and model yours after it. So thanks, guys, because I wasn't awake enough when I walked in to realize this was the first seat. But thank you for having me. I want to say that first, that this is great to be here. Brick has been down the street from my apartment for a while, and this is the first I've gotten to see your space, and it's really quite lovely. So Women Make Movies. So we are a distributor based in Manhattan. We've been around for over 40 years. I have been there, 16 years now, or almost 16 years. And we have a very, very specific mandate. We have 2 programs, but the mandate ultimately is that we work with films that are both by and about women. So for half of you here, we can talk about about distributing the projects. But I'll tell you a little bit about the 2 different programs, and then we'll show the trailers so that you can kind of get an idea of the work that we do. So we have a production assistance program that program is a little less strict with mandate. It's just that one of the filmmakers has to be a woman or co-directed by a woman, and the subject matter can be about anything, not just women. And in that program, we function as a fiscal sponsor. So basically what that means is, we help you when foundations give money towards your projects, you can use our fiscal sponsor status for the tax-deductible donation. We also have a workshop series that we do in Manhattan that I encourage everyone to look into because it's sort of similar to this where we have a lot of like meet the experts. So we'll have different people coming in from other types of distribution. We do meet the broadcasters, meet the funders. So it's a really and it's about this size, usually between 30 and 50 people. So it's a really great space to kind of network with different people, meet the experts, and get a feel for the bigger community. And we've had some pretty big projects come out of that program. Citizen 4 and Laura Platris was one of ours. A couple of other big ones recently. E-Team was one of ours. Diary of a Teenage Girl, which is narrative, was one of ours that came out of that program. And at any given time, we have, I'd say, between 200 and 300 active projects, and we accept projects all year long. So it's a rolling submission process. And I don't want to get too heavy into the details because that's boring. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and also our website has a ton of info. And then the other program that we have it's a slightly bigger program is our distribution program. And so we're a North American distributor, and we work in all markets. So in today's environment, we're kind of considered a traditional distributor in that we still do all of the markets. We have over 600 films in the program. And each year we take on, I'd say 20 to 25 new releases, again, that are by and about women. And I'd say 99% of them now are documentary. And most of the space that we work in is social justice, human rights, and impact kind of as it pertains to women. And some of the bigger ones that we've had, I'm trying to think this year, Kim Longinado, and we'll actually see the clip, Dreamcatcher was one of our big projects this year. We worked with... I shouldn't be drawing a blank because this is what I do at work, is the acquisitions part of it, but I blame it on Not Enough Coffee. We had a Regarding Susan Sontag, Private Violence, a couple of different big titles. And then the kind of work that we do, and I don't want to get too, are we going to be asking questions about like how we work, or do you want me to do that now?
You can do that now.
Do that now, okay.
You can always ask more questions.
All right, this is the shortened, amended version. So we acquire films, and in the markets that we work with, so we have someone on staff that is a broadcast consultant. So she works with all the different broadcasters to get your film seen in the broadcast market. We work with the big ones, HBO, Showtime, the different PBS, POV, Indie Lens, and different ITVS strands. We also do festival and exhibition rollout, so that's actually another part of what I do. So we work with our filmmakers to help them get their films seen at some of the bigger ones like Sundance, and we worked with films in Berlin and in Cannes, and on the doc circuit, True False, Hot Docs, some of the bigger ones. But then also we work, because it's kind of close to our heart, we do a lot of work with more of the constituency groups. So we have a lot of queer films, we have a lot of Asian films, we have a lot of urban Black diaspora films, and we work with the filmmakers to make sure that the films reach those festivals so that they get the exhibition that they want. And then the biggest core work of what we do it speaks more to our history as a nonprofit and a feminist organization in the 70s is we work in the educational and impact market a lot. It's a big umbrella. What that means for us is the standard, it's the K through 12, the university, the community college market, nonprofits, NGOs, really kind of any institution that's going to use your film as a teaching tool, as a way to further mission or, in an impact capacity in some way. And I can probably explain better after we see the clips, like how we do that. And then finally, just to wrap it up so everyone else, and sorry guys, I feel like I'm rambling on. We also work in the consumer space. So we do different things with, with iTunes, with Netflix, transactional and SVOD. So your digital rights, basically. We work with the filmmakers and different organizations to figure out how to maximize that for your consumer market. And we do all of that in the US and Canada. So I think there might be more that comes to me, but for right now, I think, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jose?
Yeah. Do you want to show the trailer or no?
Oh, it's up to you guys. I didn't know if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it. We can talk a little bit. Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Do you Dreamcatcher? We have Dreamcatcher and Forbidden Voices.
I say Forbidden Voices first because it's hardcore, and then last one's positive.
Okay, cool. So let's get some hardcore trailer going. All right.
Ça fait quelque temps que j'ai pu parler avec Deng Jinyoung sur Skype. On est vraiment très très inquiet de cette situation.
Yoani Sanchez from Cuba could not be here.
The first time they brought me for interrogation, it was for hours non-stop. The main accusation was my blood. I never thought I would see a day that people die in the streets for the basic right of their existence.
Pueblo tiene 14 millones de hits al mes en el mundo.
Ding Jingyang, elle aborde des sujets que peu de personnes osent aborder. Internet, cell phones, Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, weblogs. The government did a total blockage.
These women receive death threats. They have been beaten, kidnapped, imprisoned.
说真话不单单不仅仅需要勇气。
Time and again, these women have discovered a very simple truth. That courage can actually be contagious.
La vérité fait peur au régime totalitaire.
Wow. So that was one of the projects that you guys brought through the production assistants, or that was one you distributed?
Yeah, so this one came, wow, suddenly I feel louder. So this one did come through both of our programs. These filmmakers are based internationally, the filmmakers in Switzerland. So we worked with her to help her find some funding in the US, and working on her new project in kind of a similar capacity. And then once the film was completed, we distribute it. And so we did a lot of work with universities, student bodies to kind of see how they can use their voice on campus and to raise awareness about global issues. We did a lot of film festival work with this one. And broadcast was a little difficult because in the States, broadcast with subtitles is a very tough sell. So I don't know that we actually ended up doing a lot with that. And the next one that we'll show, Dreamcatcher, is one that I can speak a little more to how specifically we work with impact, because it's a very targeted film in that it's about trafficking and forced prostitution. It's very impactful.
It's hard to trust after being in the streets for so long. Okay, slow down, slow down. Sweetie, you need condoms. I know. We're paying this. I used to be right out here too. Brenda was a survivor. This is one of the most dangerous spots. That's why I hardly ever come out here. It was so much control. It was horrible.
Most abusers start out real sweet, and once they start, it's almost impossible to stop.
I'm here to tell each and every one of you that it is not your fault. Look at my eyes. It's gonna be okay. You know there was somebody that could reach out and hold your hand till you could learn how to walk. What we need is the information to learn how to fight human trafficking. And that's what we do. If you know somebody got your back, you'll make it. You were so courageous. I was just there to be happy. You got a dream you want to catch?
And so this is one that's one of our newer projects, and this is an example of a film that, we worked, HBO was the broadcaster on this. It did a lot of festivals here in the U.S., and then we took it on kind of at that point, and we've been working a lot with Brenda, who's in the film, Homer, who's in the film. They're based in Chicago. They have a foundation called the Dreamcatcher Foundation. Brenda was a prostitute, and so her work now is she does a lot with law enforcement. she works a lot with, obviously, women on the street to try to get them into a better place. And so we did, with this one, a lot of different interesting things. We took it on like I think, 15-city tour where we brought Brenda, Homer, and then the producer, Lisa, to big screening engagements to hand out information on how you can identify trafficking, how you can help women get off the street, how you can stop the cycle, especially in communities where there's poverty and that sort of thing. So for that film, we did a lot of impact work. But yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, we can definitely come back and talk more about that. But for now, Jose.
Hi. So I'm Jose. I'm the director of the documentary programs department at the Tribeca Film Institute. Just to give you more kind of a clarification in the Tribeca Enterprises organization. So we are the nonprofit affiliated organization to the festival. We have our own year-round support, filmmaker support. We have an education program that develops and nurtures student filmmakers in high school all throughout the U.S., specifically tri-state area here on the East Coast and in L.A. as well. And then we have an artist programs department, which is where I work. We have four documentary programs. We support about 30 documentaries, feature documentaries a year across all of our funds, and we give out about $1 million throughout all the funds. I think that what's great about the Tribeca Film Institute and our documentary programs department is that each fund has its own profile and sensibility to the filmmaker. So we try to cater to as many types of storytellers as possible. We were founded right after 9/11 when the festival was created in 2002. And what we wanted to do was create this institute, this hub to nurture storytellers, both here in the U.S., in New York, as well as abroad. So I believe it was 2007, 2008, we created the Gucci Tribeca Documentary Fund, which is a fund for social issue, urgent stories that are affecting the world today. With this fund is one of our most competitive. We get about 500 submissions, and we support between 6 to 10 projects a year. This one is the fund's objective is to support projects that might be a vehicle to shed light on injustices and hardships throughout the world. So whether it's the Ebola epidemic or teen bullying or war, genocide, environmental rights, those are the types of stories that we support. So it is very competitive, but we're always looking for these kind of epic, dramatic, urgent stories that will not be didactic first and foremost, that will be compelling and story driven and have some type of aesthetic, compelling artistry. So out of this compelling artistry, there can be some urgent kind of compelling storytelling, that will drive and change social discourse. So this fund is very competitive. It's actually open now. It opened December 5th and it will be closing February 5th. So if you have yourself a project or friends of yours have a social issue driven documentary, I encourage you to apply. And so the very opposite of this fund is called the TFI Documentary Fund, which we've had in place for, I believe, 5 years now. And so the objective with this fund that we felt was not all films are social issue driven. Sometimes you can just have a great story, an unconventional, quirky, funny documentary that also needs love and also needs support and nurturing. So this fund is what we call character-driven fund because we support stories that are that sit outside of the social issue environment and tap into different genres of popular culture. It can be a documentary about music, art, sports, theater, movies.
Can you give an example of like one film that came through that?
Yeah. So the most recognizable that you guys might be aware of is The Wolf Pack, which has been all over. It's been at Nighthawk, and it's gotten a really robust theatrical release. Yeah, and it's so. If you don't know about the film, it's about these kids, these brothers who lived in the Lower East Side projects, who had their abusive, strict father did not let them outside the apartment. So for 90% of the year, they lived inside the apartment with no access to the outside world. And the only way that they learned about the outside world was by watching movies and recreating scenes from their favorite movies. And so the story is when one of them decides to go out and venture out, it kind of propels the rest of them to go out. And so it's fascinating story. So for this fund, sometimes there's kind of an outreach component to it. For the Gucci Fund, there tends to be one. So we give grants, and the grants go at any stage from development through post. But everything else, like distribution, marketing, and outreach, that comes from TFI staff's non-fiscal support. So the way we see it is every project is a case-by-case approach to how do we work with the filmmaker on getting the best distribution for that project. The great thing about TFI Doc Fund, and we can speak further later on, but the main sponsor of this fund is a distributor, actually. The Orchard is a film. They've been involved in the music industry for years, but now they've been distributing fiction and documentary films for the past few years. And so they are supporting our fund. We announced it this past year. And in the coming week, we're going to announce who these recipients are. So in a way, it's great because from our end, we can invest a lot more in these projects and work with them in having them have a direct conduit into distribution, which we've never been involved in before. But then again, it leaves a lot of people out. Usually we support 10 projects with this fund, 8 to 10 or 6 to 10. But now it's drastically less. So there is this kind of push and pull, and it's kind of bittersweet, but we're learning as we go, and I think it's kind of enriching in a way, and it might be fruitful to have like a distributor who can get a sense of projects at an early stage and have this kind of conduit directly into a platform that people can watch these films. So I'm mentioning these two funds because they're international. Anybody can apply. All different backgrounds and sensibilities, people can apply as long as you have a social issue story or a character-driven kind of unconventional popular culture story. But the one initiative that we have that I think is kind of a good fit for all you guys as you're getting your films out and your first films or first features is our Tribeca All Access program. And so this Tribeca All Access TAA, as we call it, TAA was the seed that kind of created TFI. And so the way we see it is this is the hub to nurture emerging storytellers, both fiction and doc, that are underserved or underrepresented in the industry. And we basically mean men and women of color, both directors, writers, producers. So the idea is to have like diverse, mutually inclusive filmmaking teams that can enrich the story and can open up the industry a little bit more with unique stories. So I'm going to show you, this is a piece we did for this past year for the Tribeca Film Festival. On one hand, I think the piece works. It's it's a little self-indulgent, but I think it works because it shows you what TAA is all about in having the filmmakers tell you what the support has meant to them. But it also kind of works in not just having it be a superficial piece, but rather it has substance because the filmmakers are talking about their experience, how their lives dictate their stories, and how they're influenced by their community. So I'll let it play and then talk.
I went into documentaries because I wanted to make sure that the stories that were being told were coming from voices like mine. A lot of times when I was growing up, I would see films about Vietnam and, the names would be French or American, which is fine, but as a Vietnamese American, I wanted to see someone who told it from the perspective that I knew that I grew up with.
I grew up in a ghetto in Mumbai, and my mom was a single mom, so I grew up in poverty. So over the years, that was one of the things, is that I just do not want to romanticize poverty. or I do not want to romanticize misery, because then it's not constructive.
You know, so many documentary films are white filmmakers going into communities of color and documenting experiences of people who have been victimized, who have been oppressed. And it's a problem that I think many of those filmmakers are not really considering their own white privilege and also their own biases, as well as what are the ways in which they are not fully understanding the nuances and the complexities of these people's lives, and making sure that in their representation of these people and of their stories, they're not perpetuating a vicious cycle of negative imagery. And so it was so critical partnering with Lyric, that conversation, having that dialogue throughout the process, and kind of exploring, well, how do we want to present this man and how do we want to present his story?
Those are the things that really excite me right now, is telling a story that's unexpected, but at the same time familiar. And I think, you know, with the help of Tribeca All Access, it's much more attainable goal.
Tribeca All Access, we got connected with them, and they believed in us. First-time filmmakers who had a vision for something bigger than just a film. It was dealing with community, dealing with culture, and we felt we were home. You know, we had a family that really believed in us, and we just took it from there.
So often funders just want to focus on funding one project that has to meet a ton of very specific criteria, and I think Tribeca All Access is actually interested in investing in me as a filmmaker and not just a specific project. One thing that was very special was actually receiving that first grant and knowing that we could come back and pitch it again, and I think that actually made a huge difference in us being able to finish this second film, which is now premiering at the Tribeca Film Festival.
One thing that was real valuable for us was, you know, we had 90% of the film edited, and they offered to get us, you know, an Oscar-winning editor to come in and help finesse some of the scenes. And we found someone that didn't know anything about hip-hop, he didn't know anything about Nas. I was like, that's the perfect person. You know, I learned a lot in those. It was a crash 2-week hardcore editing session, and then we had great feedback and interaction. I love the fact he saw that.
There seems to be a constant process of interrogating what is needed in the independent film community, and the result of that is that Tribeca All Access now has a prototype fund for interactive projects. It is a really important aspect of the film community to have organizations like Tribeca that are constantly willing to change and understand what we as filmmakers need and the areas in which we as filmmakers need support.
I've been making documentaries at this point for almost 14 years, and about a decade into my career was when I first got started with Among the Believers, my current film. This is a story about the ideological divide that exists in Pakistan. There's 2 filmmakers on this, the 2 directors, me and my partner, Hemal Trivedi. She is a woman, she is Hindu, and she's from India. I am from the other side of the border. I am from Pakistan, I'm a Muslim, and I'm a male. And that is so, excuse my language, fucking cool. To if I can see that. They take chances on stories and films that are really, really difficult to get made, but are nonetheless extremely important.
So the amount of submissions we get for this is about 150, 120. So it's one of our least competitive funds. Well, and it's also, I want to make this distinction, it's a program. We call it the Tribeca All Access program, not a fund, because it is much more of a mentorship, an incubator to support and nurture these stories, like you just saw. But we select 5 documentary projects every year and 5 fiction. So, you know, it's still small amount of recipients, but the idea is that you can keep coming back to us for additional support, and then you can apply to our Tribeca All Access alumni program. So this is just a good entryway to introduce your projects to an industry. And I'll keep talking later, but that's pretty much the overview about TFI.
Thanks, Jose. Bob?
Can you pick it up? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Bob Seigel. I've been practicing entertainment law for about 20 years, mostly in the fiction and nonfiction area. Thank you. My lounge days are over. But I deal more and more in documentaries and at different stages. And again, I'm getting a sense that you have shot a documentary at this point. And the irony is, usually that's when I'll meet the documentarian, and it's almost like, wow, you should have come in earlier. Because
sorry, guys.
Yeah, because there's for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is just covering the basics of making sure that at least you're getting a release from somebody. And when you have a subject, sometimes it'll be more than a release. It'll be maybe a life story agreement. And the question is how to structure it so that basically, your project has an opportunity to be there. And then, of course, we deal with the somewhat controversial issue of how to compensate subjects. And, do they get basically if there are any profits, or are they consultants? And then how that impacts on, say, public television, which has a much more really kind of church and state neutrality about it. And obviously it's, besides getting the releases, the location releases, etc. And of course, if you're going to have any music, hopefully you'll commission it and not have to license it, because everyone falls in love with their temp track. And of course, there's always the possibility of going to festivals, and you have the festival licenses, which I kind of consider like the corner drug pusher. They give you a taste and you get addicted to the point that basically, I gotta have this, this composition or this recording on my soundtrack. And a lot of times you can pre-negotiate it with, the one license, the sync license for the composition itself on the soundtrack, usually through a publisher. And then, of course, the master recording, if you want to use that recording, usually from the artist or from the record. And then there's a whole set of strategy having to do that. And unfortunately, that's always at the end when you have the least amount of money to deal with that issue. And also how prominently it's in the project. I mean, try not to have performances on stage on camera, because you have a lot less wiggle room in that case. And again, basically, it's kind of a check on this when the film is completed, because once it goes into distribution, and again, there's so many different revenues now, it's been splintered up so much, which I'm sure everyone will talk about. I mean, there was the basic model years ago was, you go to like one shop stop arrangement where it's, one company deals with, if there's a theatrical, which is frequently a loss leader to drive your other rights. And then basically the issue is it going to be television or VOD, and then you have all these conflicting, what we call windows, about where do you go first? And I had a client years ago who made a deal with Netflix, and and then basically didn't tell me, of course. Sorry. And then it went to HBO, and they love the film and all that, and then we have, of course, disclosed it's been on Netflix, and Netflix is like the, basically the enemy. It's a channel, the Netflix channel. And they said, well, cut the price. No, we don't want it. We don't want it. We don't want it. It was on HBO Olay because it wasn't in that particular territory. So, it's like Netflix is sometimes the last stop on the trail, because again, you realize there are different forms of video on demand. Basically, a lot of it is transactionally based, and then eventually it'll be subscription based. And as I usually tell people, whether you have one person watch it or 1 million people watch it, you generally get paid that license fee. Some places they give you a little bit of a bonus if you get a number of views and things like that. So that has to be kind of coordinated. do you have to do it yourself? I mean, again, there is kind of a team eventually when you like go on the festival circuit. It's like the producer and the attorney, but there's also producer reps, which are like sales agents, and it's tough being a producer's rep, especially in this marketplace, because everyone hears about the six-figure deals, and at HBO, where a few places that you can actually see some real money out of it, and sometimes Showtime and A&E, but a lot of them will be public television, and there'll be some issues that they take certain rights. How do you deal with their ability to stream off their site, and and so there are a variety of issues, and sometimes a lot of the public television services are offering not only no advance but no license. It's like basically you're getting eyeballs. That's and recognition. That's the trade-off. And so, but basically, the idea is, and when you deliver your film, whether it's to a licensee or to a sales agent or distributor, basically you have to have your technical materials all in order, although it's a lot better than it used to be because it's basically digital. You don't have to do it into positives and into negatives and things like that. But also just the paperwork intact. And I mean, usually chain of title is relatively straightforward because like everybody who works on the project, they got to sign an agreement, work for hire. Basically that everything they worked on is owned by you, and then it becomes really kind of problematical if that's not the case. And again, it's a business. You're running a small business, but it's still a business to be run. Let me just see what some of the other. And again, there's a lot of mixing and matching. That's okay. Mixing and matching of rights. I mean, now there's this concept of hybrid distribution where basically you split up your rights, and some of the rights are maybe more conventional, like theatrical and in television, and DVD, and then you got to start splitting up all the digital distribution, and sometimes deal with a company called an aggregator. Where the reason you usually have aggregators is that a lot of companies like iTunes don't want to deal one at a time with films, so basically they'll take a whole set of them, and also the question is how do they handle that set when it comes to actually allocating fees accordingly, and and again, a lot of it is a strategy of when do you begin? Usually people say, oh, we start at the festivals, but really it's like you have to start thinking about your audience and your market in making the film. It's like, who's going to actually see the film, plunk down money, or so forth, and then you have to watch the windows because of educational, and that'll be a good probably point to segue. People don't remember that the educational rights used to go back to the days when there were projectors in film, and it was like $350, $250 for renting it or purchasing it, and that was it. And then obviously we all changed over to VHS, but the economics stayed the same because the institutional buyers, unlike the consumers, could afford to pay more. And what happened was, usually a teacher or professor, once the consumer rights came out, would buy something that was like for like $350 or $250 or whatever to get something for $29.95, and like they bring it in, which is no, you shouldn't do that. So how do you coordinate your educational so that there can be like a holdback before it's available in a consumer market, and under what circumstances? So those are some of the issues that we kind of touch on.
And so just really quickly, thinking broadly as, beginning filmmakers, it sounds like the best bet is to be really meticulous with your record keeping, making sure you know who worked on your film, how they expected to be compensated and stuff like that. It seems that being organized in that way which is not something you think about as important.
No, definitely you have to, usually, and if you're not good at it, get someone who is, basically, and they can be a producer, co-producer, whatever, and there's some who are very, very good at that. And the idea is at the end of the day, you have like kind of this folder or file with all the releases and music releases and et cetera, so that it's all together, because that is going to have to be seen frequently by the licensee, whether it's iTunes if they want to see it, or a distributor or a sales agent as well, and then everyone says, oh, too expensive to have a lawyer aboard and all that. Again, I work on a lot of documentaries. I'm not going to get rich, I know that. But I find fascinating topics. I mean, ranging from casting directors. I did worked on casting by, and just the Center in Mecca, which was basically a client went to got his jihad and smuggled in a camera, and it's amazing when he's at the mosques. It looks like it's in Panavision, really wide, but it's intriguing. And I also do some fiction, but I always notice, like on a festival basis, the real strong projects are the docs. Maybe just because of the stories and the fiction is sometimes a little runny. The actors are really good, and I wish I could say the same for the execution, but a lot of times that will be the case. Okay.
Thank you, Bob. Last but not least, Randi.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, but I asked to go last.
Smart.
Because I knew that, people on the panel will cover so much, and I wanted to try to be able to kind of maybe make sure that I don't double up or expound on things. So I'm really excited to be here because I was a BCAT producer in the 90s. So this is fun for me. Thank you. And what I wrote up some notes because I wanted to share some of what the company I'm working for, Films Media Group, does, and also just some personal advice. So take a look at this. So this is the streaming platform Films on Demand. So the company I work for is called Films Media Group. It started as Films for the Humanities in 1959, distributing on 16mm films to schools, laser discs, VHS, DVD. We still do some DVD business. Some schools are still interested in that, but primarily now we're doing streaming collections. So the easiest way to explain that is like Netflix, but for institutions. So the institution licenses, mostly colleges, some high schools, and public libraries. They license 1 year subscription to this, and then anybody who has a login, which is every member of the community, can get in. So we have, 23,856 titles on this streaming platform, which is really amazing, covering every subject area. So if you could click on the collections, it's going to open up I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's a subject list. So anthropology, archival films, area studies, art and architecture, biology, every subject area. Some of them are, very highly produced documentaries. Some of them are instructional films. So we have a nursing collection, how to put in an IV, stuff like that. So it covers a lot of areas. And I was thinking maybe we could look at sociology, which is where a lot of our, kind of social issue type titles go. That should open up. Hopefully. Maybe we lost connection. It's going?
It seems like it's going. It's waiting. Waiting. There we go.
So you can see on the left-hand side under subject, African American Studies, Asian American Studies, Introduction to Sociology, Latino Studies, Native American, Social Environments and Change, Social Inequality, Social Institutions. We need to show more to get to Women and Gender Studies. And each of those subjects, is there a little drop down under Women and Gender Studies? Has another level, maybe not, where everything is organized. So there's LGBT, there's women in social institutions, things like that. So this is really a way for people in universities, whether that's professors or students, to browse the collection and see what we have, and obviously they can also search the collection and see what we have. And then also these files go into their college's library card catalog, online catalog. So if the school, has this subscription, somebody goes to just search something, and they can get a hit to the video as well when they search. So, the videos become a whole part of the library and the school community. So I think that the platform and the resource is incredible. We pay producers on a per view basis, so there's a royalty pool and a whole calculation there. And we work with both independent filmmakers. So you would come to me, I'll give everybody my cards, and we would watch a film and see, is this something that we feel would fit in this kind of a collection? Is it something that's taught? These are the kinds of questions that we're asking about every film. Or do we already have a whole bunch of films about it? In which case we may not want it.
Do you take films, is there a minimum length?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll take shorter work if we feel, especially if it's something that, is really unique, or we don't have anything about, or it's something, a new look at something. And we also work with other aggregators or distributors who come to us, like First Run Features that distributes, a lot of really incredible feature-length films, and they do, the whole, similar to Women Make Movies, the whole, theatrical and festival and everything. And then at the end of that, they might come to us and say, we want to share this content with you. So we're really lucky to work with. And we also have a lot of work from PBS, BBC, and other large distributors. And we work a lot with non-American distributors as well, the Canadian Broadcasting Company and the National Film Board of Canada, and a lot of European distributors and producers. And my job is amazing because I get to watch a tremendous amount of films, and we license, between 3,000 and 5,000 titles a year. So you can imagine that it's a very, very different type of endeavor. And, and I think that's one of the things that I want to kind of bring up is that, if you're lucky enough to have your film selected by a distributor who's going to handle, everything the way that Women Make Movies does, you're going to have somebody really working very, very closely with you to get the film, all those different levels of exposure. And, in looking at the sort of level of competition that you're talking about, I think it's really great to know about all these established, extremely supportive organizations out there, and also to say, okay, well, what happens if your film is not accepted into all those great things? And, I think what's really good to think about is that there are so many potential avenues for distribution these days. And I think we're at a crossroads where, if you look at the history of distribution in all these ways, I was thinking a lot about here we are in public access. I used to work a lot with public access. I worked with an organization called Paper Tiger Television, if anybody knows Paper Tiger. And, they've been around forever, Video Collective, and they would do things like, they called it bicycling VHS tapes to different public access centers across the country. That was, pre-internet, right? Like, how do you see stuff? So, you would send one tape out to the public access in Oregon, and they'd send it to, California. And so this idea of democratization of media, was around in the video activists in the 80s and 90s, coming out of a lot of the, political movements, civil rights movements, and things like that, labor movements. And now we're at a time where actually media is incredibly democratic, right? Because you can make your film and you can put it on YouTube and you can get all those hits or whatever other outlets are out there. And you have BCAT and you have the resources here. So I think it's where, going back to the question of, what audience do you want? How are you going to best reach them? And then, money, right? Like, how much are you going to invest in this, and how much do you need to earn back? And, if you, again, are in a place where your project is going to be accepted in the big festivals and is going to have bidding wars or whatever, it's a very small number of films that are going to be there. So I think it's great to aim at that if that's really what you want, and then you figure out how to try to get there. And then if not, you figure out like what can you do with the film that you have, and how can you distribute it in the best ways. And I think in the educational space, there's actually a tremendous amount of competition of all the different companies that are distributing. You should think about exclusive rights and non-exclusive rights. All the distributors used to only do exclusive. And, I don't know, I might get in trouble for saying this, but we're willing to work non-exclusively with producers now because, we reach our customers, and another distributor might reach different customers. So you want to think about all the different ways that you can get your work out there. And I took some more notes that I wanted to read. Just some thoughts when you're making your distribution plan. And I think there's a tremendous amount of knowledge here, and then there's probably some like really practical stuff about building a distribution plan. Making a nice document with your plan. So some advice: remember that every distribution plan is unique, and what you want to do is have one that's just right for this particular film. So there's a lot of people out there who say, you need to do this, or everybody does that, but this is just about what you're making. And you might be making something so unique that what you need to find is something that's just right for that. And then I think it's really important to understand what kind of a film you're making. So I think that's both on a genre level, is it character driven? Is it an essay film? Is it a reportage? Is it issue driven? What kind of a film it is makes a big difference in how you're going to get it out there. I wanted to say something about writing your synopsis. A lot of what I do is I read synopses. I sit with an Excel spreadsheet and like thousands of titles, and I read synopses, and I decide whether I'm going to look at something based on the synopsis. So some things like really not to do is use words like "in this fascinating film" or "in this like amazing production." Just like really think about somebody who doesn't have, I hate to say this, doesn't have a lot of time, and it just wants to know, what is this thing, and please don't do, watch this film to find out more, so something like that. Leaving an open-ended, question, like, no. And, for us in the educational sphere, we want to know what kind of a classroom would use this. And some people, I'll pose that question to them, and they say like, oh, it's everything, it's everyone and everything. And it's like, that's not the right answer. Like, the right answer is you can really imagine the kind of person who really wants to watch this. Like, you want to watch certain kinds of things, and you don't want to watch other kinds of things. So back to social impact, there are a lot of resources to help with social impact films. So if that's what you're making, a lot of resources out there. And then, the big question is always, who's your target audience? If you can reach them through nonprofit organizations or community groups or anything like that. That's one of the best ways to reach people, and also to have community screenings where it's not just everybody on their own at home watching stuff. If you raise funds for the film, think about your funders as partners. So if you're doing crowdsource funding, those people who wanted to support you before there even was a film, they're going to be the people who, obviously, they're your audience, and then they can help you get the film out. And we all know that because we all know about social media. Be clear about the way you want the film to connect to your creative and career goals. I think is really important. I could go on about that. When you think about reaching out to somebody, like me or the folks here who, is in a position to make a decision about your film, just think about, like, some people approach with a lot of nervousness, and I know I've been like that. This person is going to reject me or not reject me, and sometimes just connect with us as people. We're like busy, and sometimes we don't get back to our emails or whatever. We're just try to remember that we may have feedback, and I think that that's one of the things that's really important. Is sometimes I think people are. I mean, it's great that you guys are here and that you have the feedback from each other. I think one of the hardest things is working on your own outside of a structure. That is so important to have people that you really trust to give like really good and clear and harsh, if needed, feedback. I think sometimes if we're working in any kind of an isolated way, we're not always good at taking that feedback. And my last thing is just, that I think it's hard to stay balanced if we're putting a tremendous amount of energy into a project. Man, that thing can become like our everything, and we're waking up thinking about it, and we're going to bed thinking about it. And that's beautiful. I mean, that's the most beautiful part of any creative process. Some people here. And I think it is so different from the distribution process, right? Which, I mean, there's some creativity in it, but like Bob said, it's business, it's just business. And, some people might appreciate what you're doing on an artistic level, but you also have to remember that at the end of the day, people are they're doing jobs or they're, that sometimes that passion can kind of get in the way of just being really clear. And sometimes you just need to bring other people in who can, I know filmmakers who I never hear from them directly. I hear from other people associated with them, and it's not clear what their relationship is, but that person is negotiating the contract for them. And I think that if you can sort of build any kind of buffer around yourself of other people who can do that kind of work for you. And what's great, what I just thought of, is that you have each other now. And I think any sort of network that you have where you can help each other out in those ways is really great. I got an MFA from City College.
Me too.
Media Studies. You did? I was in the second year.
Oh, I did the filmmaking program, the MFA at City. Yeah. Wow, when?
Nice.
Well,
I graduated in 2000.
Oh, okay. I graduated 3 years ago.
There you
Represent.
go. Nice.
Yeah.
City College. So, the people who were in that program, stayed connected and helped each other on projects, and and then life gets in the way and stuff. But I think that's it for now. And I have cards I'd love to, give to people, and just please reach out if you have work that you want me to look at.
It seems like one of the things that's really useful that when I started to think about it was someone saying distribution planning starts the moment the project comes into your mind, right? Thinking just who's going to watch this. Right. And I think that it helps you tell the story to some extent because you can think about who the people are, right? Yeah. It seems like that's something that you seem to be getting at.
Yeah. And I also understand why people don't do that. Yeah. I totally get it. It's really hard to split your brain into that many pieces, and maybe just, having other people that you're talking to, even just to have some conversations, can be really, really helpful in getting out of that kind of just so stuck in it kind of loop. And, and I also think sometimes we make work for ourselves. Sometimes we make work because we really want to go through the process of making it, and we care about the audience, but we might not be there until the end, which I think is okay as long as you're not working on a time-sensitive topic, which I've done, and that kind of sucked. So, if you're working on something that's more evergreen, that's going to stay the same in a year or whatever, you take your time. But I think that also with the thinking about your audience at the beginning is also thinking about the commitment that you're making to this film. So I made a film at City College as my master's project about women's medical condition, polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. And And one of the interesting things is, I distributed, I had a distributor, I self-distributed, and then on VHS. And then, yes, on VHS. Like, I made the copies at home, and stuff. So, so then in 2009 or 2010, I made a DVD. I was like, oh, maybe it's time for this thing to be on DVD. And I made a DVD, and I sold it, because there's all these women who have this medical condition. And now I'm like, oh, wait, nobody wants DVDs anymore. So that's been really interesting to think about the technology changing and, and then, okay, what am I going to do to distribute it digitally? Am I going to do more? And that, this is really something that has become something I'm taking care of over 15, 16, 17, 18 years. And I'm glad that it's something that I still want to be involved with. But you might make something that you're like, I don't want to think about this thing anymore. And, but if it will also take on a life of its own after, and depending on how it's out there. And that's why it's also important to think about how you want it to relate to your own life in 15 years when it's your first hit on Google and your life is different, Yeah.
Thank you. I think, do we have time for a question or two? Should we sort of table? Okay.
So
that was incredible. Thank you guys. Great. So we have time for a few questions. All right.
Okay, so a little bit of things to keep in mind when you're asking questions. When I hand you the mic, if you could please just wait a couple beats so that the camera can get on you before asking, okay?
And I really want to know what people are working on.
They have pitches.
Okay. Hi, my name is Beryl Benbow, and I'm in the documentary intensive program. My documentary is about my family's jazz legacy. And my question is, in terms of distribution, what media do you use to send it out? I have two questions. And my second question is, in reference to the film that I'm doing, since it's historical and it's about my family, I'm using images and clips of my family playing jazz, etc., and some music background. So in reference to legally speaking, is there some place that I can go to within any of your organizations to get advice about what releases I may need? I mean,
music is always problematical because it's a mix, because obviously, photos and archival footage of your family, you can get your material releases for that, but there's music, and the music, if they didn't write it themselves, then and you're playing it, then you kind of begin to dance into a particular area, which is more prevalent now, especially with documentarians as opposed to narrative producers and directors, and that's the concept of fair use. And basically it's a defense to copyright infringement, because in a perfect world you'd go and you get the rights to, again, it's the composition, it would be the synchronization right. If your family's performing it, you don't, unless they record it for a record company, you won't need the master. You'll probably just need, permission. And then of course you have to deal with certain issues about are these people living or dead, and it's kind of callous, but we say we really like the dead because when they die, their defamation rights die with them, their invasion of privacy rights die with them, and families think, oh yeah, we have that. No, and also rap publicity, which is really more a merchandising right. You have a First Amendment protection to a great extent to deal with claims of right of publicity, unless you're, as I said, selling T-shirts or anything like that, or you're using lots of footage from the Ed Sullivan Show, to illustrate something when you shouldn't. and then basically it's a test that you go through the process, and that's usually that. And one thing that's really good, one of the things that's good is that if a documentary, there's a American University came out with this booklet called The Best Practices, and it's really for documentarians because documentarians basically they got together and said, it busts our budget whenever we try to get, basically licenses for for footage or music and all that, and it's a carved out exception, and you have to really find out why are you using this pre-existing piece of material, not because hey it's cool and entertaining, but basically because you're commenting and critiquing on something. And actually I'm working on a project where there are like 100 references that will have to rely on fair use or will have to be removed. So it's really the music if it's been pre-existing, and again, you have to only use enough to convey the point. So your family you can't have your family members perform the entire song. It's just too much. So that kind of deals with that particular issue, and I know that obviously there's volunteer lawyers for the arts as a possibility. Again, it's very good, but if you won't need an attorney for an ongoing purposes, I think you really can't go to VLA and get an attorney to work on a project. It's just not fit. It's not right to the attorney at the end of the day. That's a factor, and then there's various other avenues and lots of materials on the internet. Just Google fair use, and you'll see a lot of things.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
And just the answer to how to present work. I get most links by Vimeo. I don't know about you guys with a password.
Let me just touch on that because I had a client go to Doc NYC, they're trying to round up distributors, and the question was, do you make them go to screenings, or do you give them the Vimeo password? And a lot of times you have to kind of make an evaluation that they may not show up, or if they don't show up, then you deal with it afterwards. But if you have a relationship with like a HBO or something, you may give it to them, but then it's a strategy. You give it to one, you have to give it to all, and then that gets into the whole sales strategy.
Yeah, that mainly covered it. I was just going to say, in relation to distribution, usually when you find your ultimate partner, they'll kind of help you decide what format. I mean, at Women Make Movies, we actually still surprisingly do. In the last couple of years, I think we've returned about $3 million in royalties on DVD sales alone. So there's still actually a lot of customers that really want DVD, but generally the distributor will manage that for you. And then exhibition is a totally different world. I mean, DCPs, but generally to present to anyone. I mean, we at Women Make Movies still generally get like a ProRes file on a hard drive, and then a submission is always just on a Vimeo link or something like that. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, as a practical suggestion, in terms of when you're networking and trying to connect with funders and distributors, like the handouts are kind of passe. Like in terms of a one sheet, I think it's just kind of clutters everything. So it's always nice to just a business card, and in the business card like a link or some type of access to your sample.
Shantae?
Hi, my name is Shantae Graham, and my documentary is called Manhood. It's exploring the correlation between Black men growing up without their fathers opposed to with their fathers, and asking the basic question, what does it mean to be a Black man in America? I have a question about since I do social impact documentaries, how would you... If you want to present them to different schools, is it one person that handles that, or do you have to go through various different formats? And also, can you explain what non-exclusive versus exclusive rights are again?
I mean, I'll talk to how to work with the schools, and then I'll let the lawyer talk about non-exclusive and exclusive. So there's a couple of things that you could think about. I mean, we're a distributor that does do work in that space. So we reach out to universities. I mean, we do an annual print catalog that the film would be in, and it goes out to probably close to 60,000. And then we do a lot of email campaigning as well, that about the same number, if not more. And there's other ways. If, as you had said earlier, if by chance you don't for some reason connect with the distributor, or maybe that's not the route you want to go, which is also totally valid. There's a lot of people that are doing impact work that doesn't necessarily contractually bind you to them either. You can go that route, or you can do sort of a service deal with them. A couple, just to name, there's a woman here in New York named Caitlin Boyle. She has a company called Film Sprout. They do a lot of work in the impact space and aren't really a traditional distributor in that they're not necessarily selling your film, but what they are doing is they have extensive conversations with you, want to hear from you kind of what kind of change you want to see with the film, or who you want to educate with the film, who you want to reach with the film, and then they will help you create that strategy and actually reach out for you, do the outreach efforts for you to connect with the people that would use that film in that way. I would probably look at their site because it helps explain it a bit more. There's another great organization here in New York called Picture Motion. They do amazing impact work. And work sort of in the similar way. They work on very big campaigns, but they have kind of like your Hyundai model that's like a lower end one, and then you could do like your Bentley if you wanted to with it. I mean they do a broad stroke type of impact. And then I would also look at there's some really great online tools. There's an organization called BritDoc that they have some really impressive kind of case studies on different documentaries, social justice documentaries, impact documentaries, and kind of the work that they've done. And I think, as you were saying early, like it's important to think about all of this stuff early on. Reading those resources, and they're free, which is great. You can see what other films have done that may not be exactly what your film is about or what you're doing, but can really show you how to think about it and then where to go, and how to do that. So I don't know if that fully answered it, but
also there's Good Pitch, which is yes, because Sandy Dabowski's a client of mine for many, many years, from Trembling Before God. Good, basically Good Pitch, which it's kind of a consortium with BritDocs and others, where basically you can pitch it to a variety of funders, distributors, etc. And there are a series of other ones as well, where you can kind of get out there as well. I just wanted to say, and Mike, don't hate me for saying this, but a client of mine, Emily Apt, just did a film called Daddy Don't Go. It was at the New York NYC doc, and it's about fathers who basically have stepped up because the women in their lives are no longer around in order to take care of their kids. And this touches on the issue of, you can't copyright concepts and things. It's the expression of your documentary that you can protect. And basically, there are a lot of stories to tell and a lot of approaches. So just because one may be out there doesn't mean necessarily they got the corner monopoly on it. So because you may have a different take on it. So just wanted to just touch on that.
I just wanted to add, you asked about, working with schools. So, for example, if Films Media Group licensed your film, we could do a non-exclusive arrangement, which means you could work with us and you can work with anybody else who also was willing to do a non-exclusive relationship. So, and then, working in schools, like getting into New York City schools, let's say, to do, to show the film or to have discussions, that's kind of difficult. I mean, I find generally that, getting into schools takes a lot. But think about other resources that, you may be able to. I guess I'm trying to encourage a more personal approach where you personally go into, public libraries are great. And whatever's going on here, obviously, and whoever, is in your community or, religious institutions, churches, etc., community groups. And, I think that having the personal relationship or having, people who are in the film have personal relationships, getting people out to have a discussion, so show the film and then, have something that you're looking to, make happen in the discussion or bring people together. I have seen a few films on similar issues, and I'm blanking about what they are. But, also like, who cares? This is your film, and, you're doing what you're doing. And obviously this is an issue that can be talked about in a lot of different ways. So I think that's always an interesting thing to think about when you're making a film, is to really look at what else has been made. Because, it is important to just know what's out there. And a lot of times there are a lot of films out at the same time about issues that are important. And I think that's great, but it's just important to know that it's not the only one. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Stephanie?
Hi, my name is, oh God, I sound terrible. Hi, my name is Stephanie Torsian. I have a film called I Fought the Law, and it's about police brutality, but through my eyes as a victim of police brutality. So the film follows me through my experience with it, talking to lawyers, therapists, the rippling effects that it's had on my personal life. And basically my question is that I'm a first-time filmmaker, and I got into this program because I wanted to learn. And the first week that we actually were able to rent out equipment, I think I rented out every single thing that they have here, which was ridiculous. But so my question is, what kind of advice would you give to first-time filmmakers? And do you guys have support or some type of support for first-time filmmakers?
For us, I think TAA is kind of that's the very embodiment of the support that we provide. What we do outside of the grant giving process is we do these panels open to the public. So and we partner up with different institutions. So for example, early next year, we're going to possibly do 2 that I can share my email, but one of them will be hopefully we're going to have the Filmmakers of Terror. It's this documentary about kind of an informant. The filmmakers basically were profiling this informant in a community, and also basically playing both sides of the law in a way, like knowing that there was a FBI sting taking place, and it's this fascinating. And the coffee went. So yeah, I'm just gonna go like this. So it's gonna be about the ethics of documentary storytelling. We're gonna be working with the Cardozo Film Law School, and we're also gonna have a panel on documentary producers, the do's and don'ts of how do you fundraise. So it's open to the public. We try to kind of, as much as possible, open ourselves up. In terms of you as a filmmaker, it's always great to just hear your voice when you're applying for funds. Don't feel that you need to overcompensate. In pressing us, your work will speak for itself. I was talking to somebody before the panel about, what if I'm going at this alone? I don't have a producer and editor. That's fine. We want to hear exactly what your current predicament is, and if it's a compelling vision, we will provide you with an EP or a creative producer or a consultant editor. So that's all about the collaboration between us and you.
I think making shorts is great, like really short shorts, like 1-minute movies, and just doing something to just get it made and think about different ways to tell your story, and also to write. I think writing is so important, and I think overshooting is so easy, and I think anything that can kind of give you a little creative limitation is really helpful to kind of getting there. And I want to say, sometimes I see films that are about really important things and they're not well done, and it is so upsetting to me. I saw something recently that was like, I can't license this. It's really a mess, but it's one of the most important things I've ever seen. So just like I would say, take your time, and I think it's really incredible that you can find people. I mean, it's great to learn filmmaking. It's great to tell a story, but you don't, necessarily have to be doing both exactly at the same time. Somebody else can help you make film. What's important is what it is that you have to share about the story.
Yeah, and I was just going to chime in and say, I mean, we have a lot of established filmmakers in our collection, but we also have a lot of first-time filmmakers. And I think you'll find a lot of, I mean, we're nonprofits, so our mission's a little bit different, but a lot of indie distributors, especially here in New York, there's a handful of them, they really do look for new voices to support. And then more of just kind of and we also from the Women Make Movies angle, we have a workshop series that I mentioned, and that's a really great place for first-time filmmakers to meet people in the industry, to talk to people in the industry, to meet other new filmmakers for support. But more of like a personal kind of note, New York has a wealth of different opportunities and different organizations like BRIC that are doing amazing work to connect people. And the great thing too is a lot of it is free. So there's of course IFP, which they're also in Brooklyn. They do some amazing things. Union Docs in Brooklyn, another great group that does all sorts of different types of master classes and mentoring opportunities. So really, I feel like finding community is probably the best thing that you can do. And sort of similar to what you had mentioned, taking your time with your project and really making the film you want to make. I think as a first-time filmmaker is what will eventually kind of propel you into being a second-time filmmaker. Yeah.
It is true. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a whole community, team of people to make a documentary. And you'll notice the thank yous and producers and associate producers. I think the lower the budget, the more associate producers and thank yous appear. Yeah. And sometimes the executive producer will maybe be someone with a certain profile because they believe in it. Like Daddy Don't Go. Basically, we have Omar Epps as one of the executive producers, and along with Malika Yoba. And it kind of it has a certain it helps a lot, and especially if you've shot the film, they get to look at it, and it's like the pressure's off for that. So again, you're not alone. And again, one last thing I want to say about Again, I think the documentary community is a community. It's not an overused term. You go to dword.com, which is Doug Block's website, and that you may not necessarily see what narratives.
dword.com.
Yeah, d-word.com. Because there's like New Day Films that does like a whole collaborative, and we were talking about doing it for fiction, and one distributor said the 60s are over, and basically the person who founded New Day Film said no, they're still in business and all that. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kevin Lawrence. I'm also a first-time doc maker. When I first started the class, I was very skeptical of which documentary that I wanted to do. When I first started, I wanted to remake the version of Paris is Burning. I am in the ballroom scene, and a few of the people that were in the documentary are still living. There's about 6 of them, and I know them personally, and I wanted to really get behind the scenes of it. And then I felt that it would have been a lot to do, but I'm still gonna do it. But I changed my documentary. I wanted to do out in hip hop. There's a lot of LGBT artists that are not getting recognition of saying that. I don't know if everybody's seen Love and Hip Hop Hollywood. They're saying those are the first 2 pioneers of hip hop, of LGBT hip hop, but it's not the truth. So I really went behind the scenes by me working in the music industry with a lot of independent artists, and I felt it was easier to do it that way. Is there like my question is there a length of time that I should spend on one particular project? Because this is my first time, and I don't want to take too much time. He's shaking his head. No.
Well, someone said, hey, it took me 2 years to do my documentary. That's not a long time. Yeah. Come back at 3, 5, and 7. Yeah. You count the cambium rings around the tree, and then you'll have a better idea. So there's really no time limit as long as it's pertinent, the information, to an audience.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say the same thing because we have some films that are in production for 10 years and for very good reason, and others, that they, the one filmmaker, Dreamcatcher, she puts out a documentary like that a year, and that's kind of unheard of. I mean, she is a machine as far as making documentaries and does them really well, but you should really take the time that you need to make what you feel good about. And don't let because this comes up a lot for us, filmmakers and the production assistance program will really race to kind of meet a certain deadline for Sundance or something like that. And don't compromise your project for something like that, because even if you miss the deadline, there are so many other opportunities out there to find for your film and people to champion your film no matter when it's ready. So you should really stick to what you feel is in your heart with what you want to make.
That being said, you also have to be wary of, like as was just said, other films that are similar. So take your time, but at the same time, you have to be strategic. Like, how do you keep molding it? How do you assert more and more your own perspective? Because there's many stories around that might be similar, but you're telling your own story. So that in effect makes it very distinctive. So yeah.
I just want to say, you don't have to make one long documentary. I mean, you can make a bunch of shorts. You can make it kind of a serial. I mean, we can put stuff out in any way. So you're probably connected to people on social media who are going to appreciate a short. I mean, that's who here ever watches anything longer when it comes through social media. So, and I also just think there's a tremendous amount of resources for LGBTQ cinema, a lot. So I think that there's, a tremendous amount of support that you can get also there. Yeah.
Let me just quickly touch on shorts. If you're going to do a short, it's like it'll be in a festival one of two ways. One, if it's like less than 10 minutes and they did tacked on before a feature. Usually if it's like more than 10 minutes, or you're going to wind up in the kind of the shorts ghetto, or the shorts programming where they're like 4 or 5, and sometimes they're thematically tied, and sometimes they're not. But I worked with a woman named Cynthia Wade who did the short film Freeheld, and she did it as a short. People said you could do it as a feature, but she did it as a short, also very strategically, because she felt there would be less competition for the Academy Awards in a short division, doc short, as opposed to a feature film. And yes, she won the Academy Award, and yes, they did Freeheld, and yes, I represented the ones that were being played by Michael Shannon and Ellen Page. I wish it, had done better.
And also to add to that, the fact that you developing a project for a long time doesn't mean you like isolate yourself from the industry and hunker down. Like, you can use that as an opportunity to build your audience. So you can post vignettes, like character portraits of all these artists, and so you're generating people's interest. And by the time you finish a film, you have you have an audience, you have a base.
So can you guys come back next week? Do this again. This was amazing. Thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause. And thank you for spending a little more time than we planned on. It was so helpful and great. And thanks, everybody, for coming out. Thank you.